Again, this meeting is being recorded. Anyone who speaks at the meeting shall be deemed to have given his or her consent to the recording of their likeness and speech. And at this time, I will turn this over to Chris Ulm from Strand Engineers, a resident and our resident engineer, for the PowerPoint presentation. And once that is through, then we will take questions and comments from the public. Thank you very much. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board, for again sitting through this presentation, or bits and pieces of this presentation. I think we are on the 7th time. I was going to pronounce certificates for you all. Continuing education. You certainly earned it. Thank you very much for coming up, residents and the public, to participate in this. The Village Board has a very important decision coming up, and I think it's great that the residents are coming out to understand the situation and provide input. I'm Chris Ulm with Strand Associates. We're a consulting engineering firm I've been with for over 25 years, serving municipalities throughout the Chicagoland area with water consulting for their water supply infrastructure. I've assisted Channahon with water supply needs since the late 90s. And been following this situation very closely, the aquifer situation, since the early 2000s. They asked me to do a 20-minute presentation, and we saw last Tuesday how that worked out.
40 for the record.
Down arrow.
So tonight we're going to talk about the current water supply sources and sustainability concerns with that current supply source. Some recent studies and investigations by neighboring communities, and then we'll go into the details of the alternatives investigated by the Village of Channahon. And then at the end, in order to keep you here, it's like a raffle. We don't want you to leave right after we talk about the cost comparison and the feasibilities. So that's at the end. We'll go into how the rates could conceptually be affected, and then open it up for discussion and conversation. So the Northern Illinois Groundwater Supply Study was conducted by the Illinois State Water Survey. The Illinois State Water Survey is a program out of the University of Illinois. Self-reportedly on the University of Illinois' website, they rank themselves as #2 in the nation with their civil engineering graduate program. These are nationally recognized experts in groundwater that are coming out of that program. The book that you see on the left here is the document that came out in 2015, and contrary to previous studies, it stated that there's a much more urgent need for getting off of the deep aquifer. Previous studies done by these same folks had said 2065 and beyond that the aquifer would still be able to supply the amount of water needed for the area. This document was done after a computerized model was created of the groundwater aquifer, and it showed that the Joliet area would start to experience problems around year 2030. So as a result of this, many of the area communities banded together and provided funding for additional research from this group, and Channahon was one of those communities. So the Illinois State Water Survey refined the groundwater modeling to help area communities better understand the risk. They collected a tremendous amount of existing information and historic information from all of the communities in the area, the industry in the area, and they input that into the model to help further calibrate that model to reflect what has happened in the past, so that as they progress that model forward into the future, they can do that with confidence that it's reflecting what's actually going to happen. And it was able to, well, first of all, I'll talk about the aquifers that we're talking about. This is kind of a section of the earth in this area, and the 2 yellow circles on that are aquifers that the village uses. The top yellow circle is in the Galena St. Pete formation. It is dewatering in the area. There's one well that the village has that is in that aquifer, and it is declining. The water levels are significantly declining in that aquifer. Most of the water in the village comes from the lower circle. That aquifer is the Ironton-Galesville aquifer. It's about 1,500 to 1,800 feet deep in this area. It is not recharged by any surface activity in this area. It's actually recharged, or when it was recharged in the Ironton-Galesville area of Minnesota, and that water trickles down to here over thousands of years. So the water is thousands of years old that you're consuming right now. So that was the one source of this study, and this shows some of the visual plots that were generated from the model. Modeling included all the deep wells in communities that they currently had and projected deep wells, taking into consideration that, for instance, Channahon might add 3 more wells in the future as they grow. The modeling was performed with the assumption that Joliet gets off of the aquifer by 2030. So it used to be believed by many that if Joliet goes off the aquifer, everybody else will be fine. What you're seeing here on the top row is average withdrawals. The orange area is where wells start to see problems, and the red area is significant dewatering of the aquifer. So you can see the average on the top. It's hard to see where you can see the highway system there, I-55 coming down, and I-80 is in about the center of the square. So you can see by 2050, Channahon is affected with the orange during average withdrawal, and then some red starts to sneak in by 2070. But if you go to peak withdrawal periods during summer months, when it's warmer out, obviously these wells are running longer and the aquifer is more taxed. That's the bottom row there that you see. And you can see a lot more of the darker orange or the darker red coming into the Channahon area. So most of the neighboring communities, the model showed by 2050 they're going to start to experience some significant issues with withdrawals from that aquifer. The sustainable yield was also found to be 2 to 7 million gallons per day from that aquifer. Other available aquifers present different complications to long-term sustainability. There are 2 wells in Channahon that provide about 5 to 10% of the village's water supply that are very shallow. They're in a glacial till layer, which is, a lot of people call it pit run, along the river area. And that sits on top of a fractured bedrock formation called the Silurian dolomite, which is also an aquifer in some areas. ISWS created a model for this aquifer system, and they calibrated that with results, with historic results. The focus of this, though, was not so much on sustainability and water quantity. It was more on the transport of contamination from surface runoff. This aquifer is rapidly recharged from rain events and precipitation. So the shallow aquifer was also shown not to be a reliable or sustainable alternative. Here in Channahon, the gravel layer that they're pulling from has a very fine sand with it as well. So it is very difficult to get a well with a high capacity that gets water out without getting the sand out because of the fine sand. So it takes many of these wells to replace one deep well. But more importantly, possible major future obstacles are the contamination that they're seeing in the wells. Chloride levels are seen rising. The chloride is obviously from de-icing operations mainly, in roads, parking lots, and warehouses, and our own homes as well. There's also concerns with per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, or PFOA. There's over 5,000 different combinations of this contaminant. I don't know if you've heard much about it. It's an emerging contaminant. The United States no longer makes products that contain PFAS, but they did a lot in our past. Scotchgard, Teflon, fire retardants. It's used in the film industry. It was in a lot of things. PFAS and PFOA are also known as forever chemicals. And that's because they don't break down very easily. And now we're able to test to the levels that they're at in the water supply, and starting to pick up amounts of PFAS in that shallow water supply. That's today. I put on there emerging or unknown. A couple of years ago, we wouldn't have worried about PFAS, but now we're worried about PFAS. Who knows what we're going to be worried about down the road with that aquifer. So the city of Joliet obviously was the first one is going to be, according to the models, the first one impacted by this declining aquifer and the surface contamination for their shallow wells. So they started to study this very early on, right after that 2015 report came out. Their first phase of study looked at the following sources. For groundwater, they looked at the Mount Simon aquifer, which is deeper than 2,000 feet in this area, at the next aquifer down from the Arrington-Galesville. They also looked at aquifer storage and recharge, which is where you pump clean water during low-use times into the aquifer, and then you can pull that out during peak times. For river sources, they looked at the Kankakee, Illinois, Des Plaines, and Fox River. And for Lake Michigan sources, they looked at the city of Chicago. They looked at DuPage Water Commission. They looked at Southland Water Commission, which is a newly forming water commission in the south suburbs of Chicago. They looked at Illinois American and Oak Lawn. After that study, the phase 2 study focused on the options that were most feasible coming from that study. The Kankakee River, the Illinois River, the City of Chicago, DuPage Water Commission, and then that Southland Water Commission. From that study, it broke down to two options. The Kankakee River did not have ample supply during low flow periods, and the Illinois River had environmental and treatment concerns to overcome. The City of Chicago was continued to be looked at, and the Southland Water Commission was no longer looked at, but it morphed into a different alternative where the City of Joliet goes to Hammond, Indiana, and puts their own intake in, brings raw water from Lake Michigan over, and treats it in this area. That was the final study, and the results of that study, they chose to go to Lake Michigan via City of Chicago by the year 2030. Throughout this process, once the aquifer was of concern, and once Joliet is looking at doing something to possibly bring Lake Michigan water out, many of the area communities also started investigating options. I won't go through the whole list. Many of these communities decided to stay with where they were at, or decided that the aquifer concerns don't impact them, or took a different route for an alternative source. But currently, the following communities are remaining in play as partnering up with the City of Joliet to take Lake Michigan water and form a regional water commission in this area. So that would include Channahon, Crest Hill, Lamont, Minooka, Rockdale, Romeoville, and Shorewood. And all of these communities know that Joliet needs it by 2030, so entering into this regional water commission to bring Lake Michigan water out here is a 2030 commitment. So what sources did Channahon look at? Channahon, like many of the communities around here, benefited from a lot of the legwork that Joliet did to reduce the number of options that it investigated. We looked at Lake Michigan water via the Regional Water Commission. We looked at several variants of the Illinois River from the Marseilles pool with an advanced water treatment plant. And I'll talk about both of those in more detail here coming up. And then we looked at the Kankakee River via the Kankakee River Alliance. The Kankakee River Alliance is a water group that is forming from Godley, Diamond, Braidwood, and Coal City. They recently put a pause on moving that forward, and so that option was no longer generating any input from the potential supplier, so it didn't make it to the end of this analysis. And then we'll talk too about remaining on the current aquifer to be part of the cost comparison of rates in here. So Lake Michigan via the Regional Water Commission. This is kind of a graphic depiction just so you can follow the water flow from the lake. It gets treated by the City of Chicago Department of Water Management. City of Chicago has 2 water treatment plants. You might be familiar with the one just north of Navy Pier, Jardine, produces over 1 billion gallons of water a day. This water would actually go through the one on the south, their south plant, the Sawyer water purification plant. That plant treats over 750 million gallons of water a day. And it's I think like 75th or 79th and Lakeshore Drive is about where that plant's located. From that plant, the water is placed into very deep water mains, water tunnels, not the stormwater tunnel that we've all heard about. These are treated water tunnels that finger out through the city. One of those tunnels goes out to the edge of the city of Chicago near 84th and Kedvale. Durkin Park is a location where the city of Joliet has secured rights to property, and where a water pumping station would pull water out of that tunnel and pump it out to this area. That infrastructure, the pump station, and all the pipeline coming out to this area would be owned by a regional water commission, which the communities that form that commission would all be equal voting members of and equally in control of that water commission. So that infrastructure goes out, weaves its way, staying south of the canal system, out to this area where it would deliver it all the way to all the community members' taps. So it brings it to Channahon at 2 distinct locations, and then Channahon's current existing distribution system then takes it from there to your house. That's all within Channahon's control and remains the property of Channahon. So 2 new delivery locations result in the need for some improvements to the village's system. Through this process, a computerized water model of the village's distribution system was created and calibrated, and then used to analyze the switching of a water source from the spread out well locations to 2 distinct locations in town. One near Young's and Route 6, where the village currently receives water from the city of Joliet, and the other receiving location at Ridge and Route 6, where the current water tower is south of Joliet. And then we looked at what improvements needed to be made to the distribution system piping to transmit that water throughout town in such a manner that no resident loses fire flow available to the hydrant in front of their house or any pressure within their house. So you can kind of see on here there are some water main improvements that are necessary. Other improvements that are needed, whenever you go to the city of Chicago, you are required to have 2 times your average day in storage. So some additional tanks, in addition to the ones that are in town now, some additional storage tanks and potentially pumping stations would need to be added to the water system. And those would all be owned and operated by Village of Channahon. So one thing that also we wanted to cover was the governance and what is involved with partnership in a regional water commission, and this is where I turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Chris. Excuse me. Just a couple of quick items. We have spent an enormous amount of time making sure that the legislation for the possibility of creating a regional water commission was fair to all of the communities involved. So there was a lot of work. We have been looking at this in earnest since probably 2019. So this is not a quick decision by any means. When we ask if the aquifer is going dry, I know that we have a ton of water around here, but as Chris explained, the surface water is different than the aquifer water. And as elected officials, our job is to take the information available and information that is provided for us by trained and educated professionals using scientific methods. And what that essentially says is that even if Joliet comes off the aquifer, it is not replenishing quickly enough to be sustainable out into the future, into even the foreseeable future. And did you tell them what the amount was? It was on one of the slides. It did say that the possibility for 2 to 7 million gallons of water a day was probably sustainable for the aquifer. And when we looked at our build-out numbers and our potential growth and how much land we still have left, that is us. by 2050. And so if nobody else stayed on, we might be able to just stay on aquifers for the rest of our lifetime, but that's not really a possibility for us. So we came up, so there's about 2 options, really viable options, and both of those come with a price tag. And water bills go up no matter what. We have a system to maintain, and there is an escalator built into that, and Chris is going to get into some more information on what that costs. But everything in both of the options, or 3 of the options, one of them being stay on our well system, all of those come with a price tag. There is no do nothing option. Even do nothing for, which is staying on our wells, comes with a price tag. And I see we have some East Side residents here in the audience as well tonight, and those residents currently are served by City of Joliet water. And so we still have, even if we go with an Illinois River option or stay on our wells, we still have to do a Lake Michigan water allocation, because you can't just buy water from the City of Joliet if you get it from Lake Michigan, where they are going to get it. You have to have an allocation of your own. So unless we are building a new pumping station and bringing water over I-55 to the East Side residents and taking them off Joliet, we still have to get that Lake Michigan water allocation. And so that do nothing, and I hate to say do nothing because it's not do nothing, but that's what it seems like it is not, doesn't buy us nearly as much time as you would like to think. When we talk about 2050, it seems very far in the future, but you don't just get to turn on a spigot in 2050 and have your water come from somewhere else. There is a process for putting that into place. So whether we choose the Regional Water Commission, where we have to start doing things now, or we choose the Illinois River option, where we have to build our own water treatment plant and put in a ton of infrastructure to pump water from the Illinois River here to Channahon, that might buy us 10, 12 years, maybe. And that's if our water condition stays well and good enough to stay on our wells until then. And then if we do that, we also have to build a water treatment plant. We have to treat our own water, and we have to make sure that we deal with all of the ever-increasing IEPA regulations for safe drinking water and treating that. As I said, we don't take this decision lightly. This is an enormous decision for this board, and I truly think that our job as elected officials is to take the available information, the scientific information from the professionals who are educated and in this field, and make a decision that is in the best interest of this community long term. So take the big picture. And could I say that I won't be around in 2050? Well, I'll be 85. I hope I'm still here. But I probably won't be in this seat in 2050. But that doesn't mean that we should kick that can down the road and leave that responsibility up to somebody else. This is the future of Channahon, and it matters for our kids and our grandkids, even if it doesn't matter for us. And I always tell the public when we're making decisions that we all live here too. So we're not just making decisions out of hand. These decisions affect us the same way they affect everybody else. And our engineer, in fact, is a resident, so he has a vested interest in clean drinking water as well. And our attorney, who put an awful lot of work into the Regional Water Commission potential IGA, if that's the way we decide to go, to make sure that it is fair for all the communities. He lives here too. So we all have a vested interest, and like I said, we don't take this decision lightly. It is a very big decision. I will let Chris get back to the presentation, and then during the question and answer session, there were a couple of things that some trustees brought up at the last session, so we'll bring those up again during question and answer if those are helpful information. And Chris, I'll let you get back to your presentation.
Excellent. I will, in this transition, I'll piggyback on one thing the mayor said, is that the 2 to 7 million gallons of water a day that is sustainable. Now that includes industry. There's a lot of industry in the area that's using this deep aquifer, aren't showing signs of going off, and I don't know that that's a bad thing. The Lake Michigan is obviously a very precious resource. It's very high quality water, and if you've got an industry that can use the slightly lesser quality water, I don't want to bang on the deep well aquifer is very good quality as well, but that's probably better that they're not using the Lake Michigan water for the process and remaining on the 2 to 7 million gallon of sustainable supply aquifer. Dovetailing onto that is this allocation process. So this high quality water that is being diverted out of Lake Michigan's tributary area is only allowed to take place in the state of Illinois. All of the other states and provinces around the Great Lakes are not allowed to take Great Lakes water out and then put it into a river that flows down the Mississippi, down the Mississippi River to the ocean. Illinois is the only state that they have allowed to do that. There's a compact of all of those entities. Illinois is allowed to take 3,200 cubic feet per second. That's it, out of that lake. That includes the amount of water every time one of the locks is opening up and letting water go past. That's included in that allocation. Every drop of rain that falls in certain portions of the city of Chicago and ends up in the Chicago River, instead of which goes then down this river instead of into Lake Michigan, that is counted into that 3,200 cubic feet per second of diversion. So the remaining amount is what the state is allowed to give away to municipalities for drinking water. They keep very close records on this, as you would expect them to, because the rest of the surrounding entities require them to. So they don't give it away willy-nilly. It is a court process to get what's called an allocation, which is how much water you're allowed to take on average over the course of every year. So near-term timeline for going to Lake Michigan water is to immediately start that allocation process. I've actually got it before January of 2022. It needs to be to IDNR, Illinois Department of Natural Resources, by March 31st of this year, in a couple of months. And it is a very big, it's not a simple permit process to fill out. Following that, then there are several hearings that are involved. Environmental groups will come to investigate. Hopefully not protest, but definitely investigate to make sure that this is the right decision for the environment, that this is a decision that's made with the environment in mind for the village of Channahon to get that, as they should, in being good stewards of the environment. It will take a year to actually get that allocation. It will be March of 2023. And that is why this is such a short fuse. That is why you'll see on there February of 2022 is when Joliet has said, you have to sign this agreement if you want to be part of this, or you're not going to be part of this. We have to get moving. Just the Regional Water Commission alone is looking at between $700 and $800 million worth of infrastructure that has to be built. You couple in all of the other communities that are building infrastructure, there are over $1 billion worth of infrastructure that has to be built. This is not something that the industry can build in a couple of years. This is something that 8 years is going to be tight to get it done by 2030. I really rambled on that one, I'm sorry. So the long term, I just covered this one. Long term, once allocations are received in March 31st of 2023, it actually becomes a water commission. Between 2023 and 2024, there's final design, land acquisition, those types of processes. And by 2024 through 2028, or maybe even to 2029, is a lot of construction. And then in 2029, commissioning of the system so it's ready to run in 2030. All right, so switching gears now to the other option that was looked at. Several variants of taking Illinois River water via Channahon-owned or shared with a neighboring community advanced water treatment plant to withdraw water from the Marseilles Pool of the Illinois River. The advanced water treatment plant, we talked about PFAS and we talked about chlorides that's in the groundwater. That is definitely in the river, and much, much more. The river changes water quality by the day. In order to fire up that advanced water treatment plant, there's years of study that has to be done and years of proving to IEPA that your treatment process can handle the high turbidity of the spring and the higher concentration of contaminants during low flow periods. Then from that advanced water treatment plant, which was placed on property down near Tabler Road for the conceptual design, water is pumped up Route 6 through a transmission main. In one of the variations, it branched up the Clinton Road to a neighboring community that you probably all picture in your head. And then in the other situation, which we're going to show here tonight, it was just serving the village of Channahon. So the numbers that are presented tonight are if that plant is only serving the village of Channahon, because the partner is looking pretty promising on going towards Lake Michigan water. So that wasn't assured that you would have a partner to share in ownership of that. So then once it gets to the village's system near, I can go to this one actually. Once it gets to the village of the village's system near Ridge Road and Route 6, then the same improvements that would need to be made, actually more extensive improvements need to be made to get that water from Ridge Road all the way across the river and then up to the east side. The computerized water model was used to determine what improvements those need to be, and then we were able to put costs associated with that. So the timeline for that, even though this option takes into account that you can use your deep wells up through 2050. So this option pushes that off. But you can see here that I've got deep wells running up to 2050, and then it turns the plant turns on, and you're on the water system. But on the bottom, you can see the shallow wells. I put 2028 there, that the shallow wells need to be turned off. That's when it's anticipated that PFAS regulations are going to kick in. So potentially that's where the shallow wells would either need treatment or need to be turned off. And then by 2035, you're going to need to start doing a lot of work to get going on this plant. So Mayor might still be sitting up there in 2035. I don't know. I guess that's up to all of us, right? So that's a timeline for the switch to the river source. Now, some people might have an option in their head that, okay, well, we'll wait until 2050 and then we'll get a Lake Michigan allocation, and then we'll go to Joliet and say we want to join on. The Regional Water Commission, if you're not joined on, they're not going to build a pipe extra big just in case Channahon decides in 2050 to jump on. And IDNR is not going to hold an allocation. They might be available. I'm not saying they won't be available, but there's certainly no guarantee that there will be any room left in the allocation by 2050 for Lake Michigan water. All right, this is why y'all came. So I think in the handouts too, this is shown so that you can actually read it. Comparing the conceptual rates, so these rates, all of the costs that were generated from this, we considered no grants or any type of special financing or funding. The Regional Water Commission does have secured what's called WIFIA funding, which is a very long-term. They've actually able to spread out the cost of the Regional Water Commission or Channahon's portion of the Regional Water Commission over 39 years with that, which reduces the annual cost. And it's low-interest funding. But Channahon has in the past been able to take advantage of special financing, ARA funding, and get grants and principal forgiveness. None of that is considered in here. This is taking the conceptual costs and it is spreading it out over projections of how much water will be used during those future years. So it's conservative, somewhat. So current rate, or the 2020 rate, was $6.41 for every 1,000 gallons of water. These monthly bills that are shown here are for the average residents using 5,000 gallons of water a month. So the water portion was $32.05, I think. Yeah. Sewer $41.92, and refuse was $26.28, totaling for the average water user $100.25 for the utility bill, the overall utility bill. So for the next two tables, it's projecting out to the 2030 and 2050 utility bills for each of the three options. The top option is with no change. If everything was beautiful, we didn't have this problem, and the aquifer was sustainable, the village increases the water and sewer rates 3% per year by ordinance. So that's how those two were increased. The refuse and other fees is not within the village's control, that's contracted out, but we assumed a 3% growth per year. So with the no change, $134.73 is what the average user would be paying in 2030. For the Lake Michigan option, the water rate of $8.61 would conceptually go up to $15.50 to $16. With all the sewer and the refuse staying the same, instead of $135 a month, it goes up to $160 to $175 a month by 2030. The Illinois River option, you're still not even on it yet, so technically, if it were me, I would say let's start saving for this a big investment, but assuming that the village just continues to go at 3% until they have to invest in the Illinois River system, it would be the same $135 that the top line is. So, because Lake Michigan water and the purchase of Lake Michigan water from the city of Chicago, the agreement that the city of Joliet negotiated with the city of Chicago is first of its kind. It's a very good agreement and a good way of determining how much the rate's going to go up year over year. It's capped at 5%. They can't raise that water rate more than 5% on an annual basis. If the CPI is lower than 5%, then the CPI is what they'll raise it at. If the cost of service is lower than that, if it's the lowest of these three, the city of Chicago took all of the pension debt, all of the lead line replacement, all of the meters, all the water main replacement, everything within their system, they took it off the table. And they're not going to charge the Regional Water Commission for any of that liability. They're charging for the intake and the increase in costs on that. The Sawyer water treatment plant increase in costs and level and the operation and maintenance of that, the tunnel line that goes out to 84th and Kedvale, and that is it. So that in historical data has showed that increases by 1.35% per year. So they're projecting less than 2% increases year over year on the purchased water rate. And that's in an agreement for those three methods to be the way it's the rate is charged. So that's less than 3%. So what you see here over time is that eventually by 2050, the village, if everything was going fine, it would be $243 per month for the water bill, but it's caught up to the Lake Michigan option at that point in time with $240 to $255. That's because 3% is growing faster than the city of Chicago's projected rate increases. And that's where you see the switch to Illinois River impacted by 2050. And you can see it's $300 a month. It's significantly more. So I think last time you wanted to know what the capital cost was that for each of these options. The capital cost in 2020 dollars to the village of Channahon for going to Regional Water Commission, which includes Channahon's share of the commission construction and all of the internal improvements to Channahon, is $75 million. The cost to go to an Illinois River plant and do the improvements within town is $85 million in 2020 dollars. Construction costs are going to go up over time. So holding that off until 2050, that $85 million grows faster than the cost to purchase water from Chicago.
Chris, can I just add one?
Yep, absolutely.
You were talking about the agreement and the rate that Chicago's going up. That's a 100-year agreement. That was.
Yes. Yeah. And that's on this slide as well. So pros and cons. I'm using just Lake Michigan alternative to talk about the pros and cons. It kind of helps do the pros and cons for the Illinois River option as well. Pros for Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan has very high water quality. If we were all extremely thirsty, and I had a 5-gallon bucket of Illinois River water raw and a 5-gallon bucket of Lake Michigan water raw. I guarantee you which one's going to be empty by the end of the day. Low risk of running out of water or water restrictions. The Illinois River could very likely come with the potential for low flow restrictions, where they say the river water is too low, we need you to shut off your intake. In which case the village would have to turn its wells back on to keep water in the pipes. Lake Michigan certainly comes with risks of outages. I do not know, in my 26 years, it may have happened, but I cannot think of a time where a community was forced to turn their wells back on in an emergency situation and use that. I know of times where communities will be informed in advance, hey, we've got to repair this, it's going to be down for 4 hours, fill up your tanks, and they make it through it without the paper even ever getting involved. The Illinois River could also potentially have contamination flumes, I'll call it, that would come down, and you know, you've seen algal blooms in Lake Erie that have caused shutdowns of intakes. So there are those risks as well with the Illinois River. With Lake Michigan, water treatment is by other entities. The water treatment plant that we're talking about off the Illinois River would need around-the-clock operations. It would be a very complex system to run. City of Chicago treats their water for over 5.2 million people, and those costs and those efforts are spread out over all those people. Secure Lake Michigan allocation while available. I talked about that earlier, that they might not be available later on. Simplified operation and maintenance. All water systems have to put some sort of disinfectant into the water as it leaves a plant to protect the water from bacterial growth on its way to your house. Chlorine, right? So the City of Chicago will, that's the only thing that the City of Chicago might need to be boosted a little bit. Chlorine in water decays over time. If you don't like the chlorine taste coming out of your tap, here's a tip. You got a free tip tonight? Fill a pitcher up and put it in the fridge, and it'll off gas, and you won't have that chlorine taste. So that might have to be touched up when it gets to the village of Channahon, but there are requirements for the Regional Water Commission to deliver at certain levels. Lower cost than treating Illinois River supply. Due to significantly larger customer base and other factors that I mentioned with the rate escalation, costs increase at a slower rate, potentially resulting in lower long-term rates. So the cons associated is you're switching slightly earlier than needed. Commission infrastructure control shared with several other partners. You don't have full control of that commission line like you have full control of your well system now. We talked about the 100-year agreement. That's 50-year renewable by the commission members, but the Chicago is committed to 100 years. So it's 50 plus 50 for the commission members, but it's a 100-year agreement, 100-year commitment by the City of Chicago. Cons, it's also higher near-term rates than remaining on groundwater. As we saw from the slide, 2030, you would have the same rates if you stayed in wells. How'd I do?
You did.
Same.
Oh, yeah, same as Tuesday. I told you it was 40 minutes. 1 second, I just have one, I know, right? I think you're actually 4 minutes longer, Chris, but I did interrupt you once. The only other thing that I know you touched on it briefly, and one of the trustees brought it up the other night, and I wanted to make sure that the public knows as well. With the Regional Water Commission, and you said they're not oversizing the pipe for future members to come on. So I know you touched on the allocation may not be available, but you also will not have necessarily the opportunity to join the Regional Water Commission at a later date, like putting it off for 15 years, whatever, and then joining. That's not how the Water Commission is structured. So at this time, then, does the board have anything they want to add very quickly before we ask the public to comment? Sam, you good? Okay. At this time, then, Jean, can you sign in and state your name for the record, please? And then ask away, sir.
Want to say my name?
Yes, please.
My name is Gene.
How do I feel?
We know your last name, but okay.
I just had a couple of questions. Am I only allowed to ask one question? First question, the Illinois water experts that you mentioned before, they were wrong in 2016. Is there a possibility of them being wrong again?
I'm gonna let Chris answer that, and there's a reason, no, that's okay, there's a reason that has changed, and, not necessarily wrong, they just have more complete information, but go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, the reason yeah, correct, that was a good way to put it. Like, in 2015, they were actually right when they came out with the document that was published in 2015. Before that, in the early 2000s, and going back to, I've read documents from the 60s on this aquifer system. They just didn't have the capabilities. They didn't have the computers. They didn't have the ability to collect data and analyze data. And so, as the ability to analyze that data has become better, as computer functions and modeling things have become better, they've been able to be more accurate.
Okay. And then, are all the surrounding villages that you mentioned, are they all on board, or are they, is everybody committed but us? Or, like, obviously Joliet has, but has Manuka, Shorewood, Rockdale, and then there were several others on there. Have they all committed, or are they still kicking the tires, so to speak?
So there are, I'm sorry, how many I've lost count. How many? Seven still at the table, basically negotiating for this Regional Water Commission. We are one of them. Nobody is making a formal decision until February of this year. But most of them, well, not nobody, but all of them, with the exception of us at this point, have intimated that they are going with the Regional Water Commission, which is why Chris mentioned that we looked into the Illinois River water and potentially partnering with our neighboring community, but all indications are that they are also going to the Regional Water Commission. So if we choose Illinois River, we would be building that plant on our own.
Okay. And then, what about homes that currently have a well? Would they come out? Would they be condemned?
No, they would still be on wells.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, is this going to be put to a vote in the village, or like a referendum, or is this something that the next month at the meeting you guys just vote on it?
It's a board vote.
Okay. All right. Well, those were my questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would also like to just mention that, like I said earlier, that we are recording this. And so the recording will be out on our website for anybody who wants to refer back to it. If you want, if you want to refresh the information, you do have handouts. There will also be a frequently asked questions portion of that. So the questions that are asked here tonight, and for the public who is not here this evening, will be able to know what questions you asked as well. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, real quick, we have a couple more meetings too. If people couldn't make it tonight, or if they watch the video and then want to come comment, we have how many more meetings before the vote? At least two.
We have another two. Two before the vote. Yes. So we have one on Monday is our second January meeting, and then we have two in February, first and third Monday, all of them here at 6 p.m.
And Mayor, real quick, the preliminary agreement that you have in front of you tonight that I left for you will be on the agenda on Monday night, and it'll be fashioned in the forum for approval. But that'll be the first night that'll be out for any discussion that might happen on the upcoming 3 meetings.
Hello, my name is John Sargent. I live in the village at 26724 West Megan. I'm just rising. This is a difficult decision always when you're spending dollars 20, 30 years in the future. A lot of us won't be living here. Certainly a lot of us won't be on the board. But same thing happened when we created forest preserve districts. Same thing when we created state parks. A lot of those decisions were made, and the people who made those decisions were never going to really see the true fruition of the plan down the road. This is one of those moments, I think, for this village. This scenario has repeated itself to our northern suburbs, starting in DuPage County, and slowly has trickled all the way down. It doesn't take a genius for us to look at that and understand what happened in Naperville when they created the DuPage Water Commission there. Started to happen in Bolingbrook in northern Will County, now Joliet. Either way, we're going to be in a position where we're out of water in the future. For those that you touched briefly on PFOA and PFAS, #1 carcinogen of hollow organ cancers, and also all of the farm runoff as well. So that's a huge issue I think in all of our areas when we talk about that. So I encourage the board and every village resident. I looked at the increase in cost. I know I happen to work in the city of Naperville. The average Naperville water bill, this includes electric rates too, but it's about $160 for a family of 4 with 4 bathrooms. I spend $30 a month on softener salt, just so I don't have to.
Okay, that's something we didn't bring up.
So that's a huge issue, as well. So you look at the cost 10, 20 years from now, it's pretty negligible, I think, considering appliance, replacing appliances.
Thank you, John. That was one thing, if you're not done staying up there, Chris, there was one thing Chris forgot to mention.
Yeah, I did
so-
forget to mention that Lake Michigan water is lower in hardness. It might take a couple of months for the system to acclimate, but you would be able to turn off your water softeners. I was in Bolingbrook when they switched, and I was glad to stop feeding that. And also your fixtures, you mentioned, appliances do better with Lake Michigan water than with either the unsoftened water from groundwater or with fully softened water from groundwater. Both of those are harder on fixtures and appliances than Lake Michigan water.
And I believe
nicer too, Chris.
I believe currently, I think our water, and this is certainly someone else probably knows the answer, I think we're about 15 grains of hardness in Village Channahon. Lake Michigan water is roughly 8.8, and we usually soften our water between, 5 and 7, right around there when we do it, so it's pretty close to what we soften our water to. Anyways, the last question, I did have a question. I know some northern cities that have switched to water maintained some of their wells as an emergency use system. Is that also the village's plan with this?
It is.
Man, I don't know why I went over, I missed so many things. So yeah, the village would maintain their existing wells that they have in place for, if there was an extended emergency, some sort of catastrophic thing that went beyond the 2 days storage, that 2 days storage would give them time to get their wells up and running and keep water in the system under that emergency. So yes, the village does plan to keep wells as backup.
Would there also be a need to keep a treatment facility up and running too, or would there be a cost savings with shutting that down?
Yeah, so the treatment for radium that is currently in place doesn't mothball easily. It doesn't sit there and wait for a possible emergency. So it would probably go away. There would need to be chlorination. Radium is a chronic contaminant. You know, if you recall, you have to drink at least a liter of that water every day for 70 years to have a 1 in 10,000 chance of developing cancer from it. So if you get that radium-laden water for 30 days under an emergency situation, IEPA will allow that. So the short answer is no, the plant's going to go away, but we'll still have to disinfect. There will be chlorination.
We should clarify, Chris, that the village does not intend to continue building wells to meet its ultimate growth to 28.
Right. So just like you mentioned, Naperville, Schaumburg, Downers Grove, all of those DuPage County communities still have wells that they run monthly, but they are the wells that were there in 1988. Those towns continue to grow. They didn't continue to add wells. So they would provide an emergency level of water, but there might be some restrictions that would go on to reduce usage. There probably would be restrictions that would take place to reduce usage to just the bare minimum needs.
One more question for you, you may be familiar with this or not, but in 1988, when that decision was made to form the DuPage Water Commission, Aurora decided to back out and went with treating river water. It's my understanding now they have to find an alternative source as well because of low flow or low river restrictions with the Fox River. Is that correct?
I don't know that for sure. I know that they use a combination of wells and Fox River water, and as does Elgin. They're very similar processes. I don't know if they're on that list that has to.
Just some residents from Aurora had informed me that they were also looking for an alternative source, and if they could go back to 1988, they would do it in a hurry.
Do it, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't know the answer to that either, but I have heard a couple of things about them looking with, talking with DuPage Water Commission to join on that. I don't, like I said, don't quote me because I don't know that for sure. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Thoughts? Please sign in and state your name so you can sign in when you're done.
Michael Litt, I'm in the village. In some of the older neighborhoods, not only, we are on septic still. Would we still remain on septic or, okay, that was my only question. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
My name is Gary, I'm from the village of Channahon. Would the board consider a higher rate to industries that use, overabundance of city water? Because there's a lot of
industry down here now that depends on use of city water to run their businesses. Got a lot more trucks here. You know,
We have lots of things actually to consider. We,
take the cost away from, you know,
Mhm.
the village.
we've talked about, so once the decision is made with whatever we're going to do, then we have, the water commission is sort of a separate entity. We can do what we want to do with our, water once it gets here, once it gets to our point of delivery. So we've actually talked about, several options, if we have options for doing that, if we have different ways of financing that can ease the burden on residents, if we have a senior rate, those are all decisions we would make internally, and whether or not we change anything, but certainly everything is on the table.
How would that cost before it get back to the citizens then? To the average citizen? If you did raise the rate to industries,
Right?
how would that reflect in my bill? How would I get that?
You wouldn't be getting money back, but it may lower the cost overall for you if we were charging them a different rate. It would potentially, they would be paying more of the debt and you would be paying less of it, because we will have a debt service every year. We will have an amount that we have to pay. And how that amount is broken up, whether everybody's paying the same rate or somebody else is paying, like seniors may be paying less of that.
Would that be through a rebate through my taxes every year?
No, that's not part of your taxes.
Show up on your water bill, be less of a water bill potentially.
We're charged a flat rate every month, right?
No.
Usage.
So
You're charged a rate based on your usage. I mean, you're charged a rate and then your usage determines what your ultimate bill is. But like I said, we have the potential for having a different scale of rates. Maybe senior citizens pay a lower rate than I would pay.
that's what I want to know. Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions, comments, thoughts? How are you, sir?
Good evening, Dave Harkey. Just one thing I wanted to point out, I'm sure your expert consultant, Mr. Owens, already thought about it, but concern of mine and the field that I'm in is always concern of emerging contaminants, especially such as the PFAS and PFOS. There's only more and more of those regulations that are probably going to be implemented. They become very burdensome on municipalities and cities with treatment systems, and I don't think it's probably the best idea for the village to be able to bear that on their own. So I think that's a high risk for the village to continue to take on, and with the well system as well as with river water in the future. So in my opinion, the best option would be to go with the Water Commission and bear those costs with other communities being at a high risk in the future. Because already the PFAS regulations are so strict, I'm not sure how we're even going to be able to meet those. And it's talking about 0.02 million or billion?
Parts per trillion.
Parts per trillion, which is a ridiculous level. So I think it's better to share that with other communities. One question I did have, we're on the east side. I believe we currently have City of Joliet water in the Park Place subdivision. So I believe we would already be part of that, right?
Yes, and I know I saw you walk in a little bit late, so you missed the very beginning of that. But yes, the east side of residents east of I-55 are served by the City of Joliet. So unless we did something completely, built something to pump water from this side over across the highway to the east side residents, they are currently served by the City of Joliet and would continue to be so. And so Lake Michigan, the water is coming,
I don't, just part of the east side is served by
Right.
city
Well,
water.
that's
Most of
true,
them are
but
wells, yeah.
well, yeah, some of them are wells, yeah.
At Leland Hills,
But
the
part,
10 acres.
Dave's subdivision is City
Right.
of Joliet.
But when we say east side of 55, it's not everybody, yeah.
What
You
did
may
I-
very well choose, for financial reasons, to just connect to our
Right.
current system, if there was no choice to go to the commission by us. Because you would still be going through erosion control costs,
And allocation costs.
and you're still going through allocation costs. It might be cheaper just to run a pipe from our existing system out there at that point. We don't know that for sure, but it's a possibility, so I guess I wouldn't be absolute on either one of the options.
No, and I think I said that earlier, actually, unless we decide to pump water over to that, across the highway, it would be City of Joliet. Thanks, Dave. Anybody else?
Hi there, my name is Dawn Cardona, and I'm actually getting ready to close on a house in town center here next week, so I'm pretty excited. Prior to that, though, I grew up in the city of Chicago, and I grew up, I moved out here in Channahon back in 2017, and then I moved out to Plainfield, now I'm moving back. I've been on the other side, so I know Chicago's water, and it's some dang good water. It's really good, and when we initially moved out to Channahon, we had to really get used to the water. It was like, the appliances, the hardness, the replacing the Keurig machine how many times, but, and now we're on Plainfield and we're moving back, and when I got news of this, I'm like, oh, yes, Chicago water, yeah. So, I just want to, say I've had the other water and I've had this water, and this is my 2 cents, so, I just wanted to say that, so I'm really excited about this, so, anyway, that's just me.
Thank you very much, and welcome back.
Congratulations on the new place.
Anybody else? Anybody on the board have any comments?
Yeah, I don't think there's ever a question that the water's not good.
Microphone?
It's on. That the water's not good. Lake Michigan, I was a little boy in Indiana, my grandparents in Hammond used to bring the jugs home to our house because we had well water in Crown Point. So it's not an issue if it's good or bad water. That's not even a question. It's great water. It's just a matter of 75 million.
And yeah, like I said, it's not a decision anybody's taking lightly, so I want to.
Toughest decision. Very tough.
Well, and
we're still, as a board, we've been talking about this for months and months and months, and you think there's so many moving parts on this thing, you're still learning about this, and there's things that come up with, we didn't think of that. So it's a lot of moving parts.
And you know how many times I've told this board that this is going to be the biggest money decision of our tenure.
Yeah,
So
no doubt.
it is a huge decision. Anybody else? All right. Chris, anything to add? Ed, anything to add?
No, Mayor.
All right. I thought you were getting ready to comment. If there is nothing further then, just a reminder that this will be on the website if anybody wants to refer back to it. And we are also happy if somebody wants to email if you think of questions. I know this is a lot of information. You have the handout. If you think of questions, please email us. We are happy to answer it, and those will end up on the frequently asked questions. Gene?
Mayor, while Gene's walking up there, the information will be on the website. I've just asked people just to give us a little bit of time to get everything together, to put up there and that sort of thing, so it will be a few days at least, maybe early next week before the information's up there.
Yep. Gene?
Real quick, if this, well, I should say when this goes through.
It's an if.
It's a definite.
I didn't say it's a definite.
When it goes through, when do we start incurring the cost on our bill, and when does the water start coming in? I know you said that in a few years, I think it was 2023 is when they start, 2024 to start construction. When will we start receiving the water from the city of Chicago?
So January of 2030, January 1st of 2030 is when the city of Chicago expects payment. Should I get a microphone? Sure.
Yes.
Okay. January 1st of 2030 is when the agreement states that the city of Chicago will start to get paid for a minimum take of water. So that is when it is, that's why when listening to her, it's like, okay, it's gotta wait 8 more years. Because that's as fast as that could go, could possibly
What
go.
about the bills?
Oh, yeah. That's when you would receive water. Now, I don't know how the finance people are going to start to, some communities may decide to start to garner funds and start to regulate.
So we could potentially be paying this for this 8 years before we receive water.
To some extent, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Heather, did you want to answer? Heather's our finance director. Heather Wagenblatt's our finance director. She can better address this.
So if the board does decide to join the commission, then at that point, we would be taking an even closer look at the costs versus the revenues. You most likely will see an increase, nominal increase, probably soon, sometime in 2022, so that the village would be able to gain those additional funds and invest those and, earn some interest and try to really offset, the total cost for the residents. We'll do everything we can to make it as minimal as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, if there is nothing further, we would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by trustee Slocum, second by trustee Greco. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned, folks. Have a good evening.